بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني من نور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. One of the points in the discussion about justice is that it is impossible to think that God would do something immoral or an ugly action. And he says the reason is that God has knowledge about immoral actions or ugliness of those actions, and he has no motivation for doing them. Those who do bad things, either they don't know that this is bad, or they know but they have motivation to do bad things. God has no reason for doing bad things. If you look at the main text, الثالث, page 46, فاستحالة القبح عليه تعالى. It's impossible for God to do something which is immoral, something which is ugly. لأن له صارفا عنه. Because there is something that keeps him away from what is immoral. وَهُوَ الْعِلْمُ بِالْقُبْحِ. And that is the knowledge of badness or ugliness of the actions. وَلَا دَاعِيَ لَهُ إِلَيْهِ. And there is no motive for him, nothing to encourage him to do this, to motivate him to do this. Because لأنه إما داعي الحاجة. The motive can be need. Some people do bad things because they need. For example, they are in need of money. Then, because they want to meet their need, sometimes they do moral actions, sometimes they may do immoral actions. But if they didn't have need, they would not have done it. Okay? لأنه إما داعي الحاجة. The da'i, motive, is either need, which is impossible for God, الممتنعة عليه, أو الحكمة, or is wisdom, which here is not possible to think of a wise motive for doing bad things. Yeah? So, there is no good reason for doing bad things, and bad reason is coming from need, and God does not have need. In some books, for example, they say like this. They say anyone who does bad things or does zulm is either because he doesn't know, or he doesn't have the power to stop that, or he has some need. God is not needy, but he has power and knows, so he shouldn't do any bad thing. We have also a hadith, إِنَّمَا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى الظُّلْمِ الضَّعِيفِ. The only one who needs to do zulm is za'if, weak. When people are weak, it's very dangerous. And people who feel weak, they may do bad things. The people who feel confident, they are in control of their emotions and they can do make better decisions, and they can act more properly. But people who are worried and frightened, they may make mistake. وَلَأَنَّهُ لَوْ جَازَ صُدُورُهُ. Another argument. If it was possible that bad actions are issued from God. Sudur means issuance. So bad actions are committed by God. They occur from God. لم تنع إثبات النبوات. Then it was impossible to prove prophecies of the prophets. Why? Because, as we said before in the discussion about husn qub, when a person claims to be prophet and he brings mu'jiza, how do you prove that he's a true prophet? You say it's impossible for God to give miraculous power to a liar, to a dishonest person, because this would this type of power would misguide people. Would God give miraculous power to a liar to misguide people? No, this is immoral. But if you say we don't have any problem with God doing immoral actions, so then you cannot even prove that this person is a true prophet, so religion cannot be proved. وَلَأَنَّهُ لَوْ جَازَ صُدُورُهُ لَمْ تَنَعَ إِثْبَاتُ النُّبُوَّاتِ فَحِينَئِذٍ يَسْتَحِيلُ عَلَيْهِ إِرَادَةُ الْقَبِيحِ. So it's impossible that willing to do bad things happen to God. God would never want or will to do bad things. Why? Because willing bad things is bad. لأنها قبيحة. إرادة القبيح قبيحة. Yeah? If murder is bad, willing to murder is also bad. Yeah? Yeah. So, this is the main text. Now let's go to the commentary. قال الثالث فاستحالة القبح عليه تعالى. The third is about impossibility of immoral actions coming from God. أقول يستحيل أن يكون الباري تعالى فاعلا للقبيح. It's impossible that the creator, bari means creator, God, that God the Almighty would be the doer of immoral actions. Fa'ilan, doer of bad actions. وهو مذهب المعتزلة. Mu'tazila shared the idea that Shia have, that God would not do immoral actions. وعند الأشاعرة هو فاعل الكل حسنا كان أو قبيحا. According to the Ash'arites, God is the doer of every action, whether it be moral or immoral. وَالدَّلِيلُ عَلَى مَا قُلْنَاهُ وَجْهَانِ. The proof for what we have chosen and we have said are two. We said God will not do bad things. We have two arguments for that. الأول أن الصارف عنه موجود والداعي إليه معدوم. In order to do something, you need to have motive. And you need to have no sarif, no obstacle. Here you have no motive and you have obstacle as well. Even not having motive was enough. But here we have also sarif. Sarif means takes you away. You remember we had in usul qarinatu sarifa, which takes you away from ma'na al-haqiqi to ma'na al-majazi. Yeah, from the real literal meaning to the metaphorical. That was sarifa. So, أن الصارف عنه موجود والداعي إليه معدوم. There is something that keeps God away, doesn't let God do this. And also there is no da'i. Da'i means motive, something that calls you towards action. وَكُلَّمَا كَانَ كَذَلِكَ امْتَنَعَ الْفِعْلُ ضَرُورَةً. When the situation is like this, it's impossible for the action to come, to happen. ضرورة, necessarily or self-evidently. أما وجود الصارف, why there is an obstacle, why there is something that keeps this away. أما الصارف وجود الصارف فهو القبح والله تعالى عالم به. This ugliness of that bad actions is there and God knows about it. So when God knows about something is bad, then God will not do it. وَأَمَّا عَدَمُ الدَّاعِي, why there is no motive? Because what are possible motives here? Let us see what options we have. فَلَعَنَّهُ إِمَّا دَاعِ الْحَاجَةِ إِلَيْهِ. What can be motive and can call and move God towards this bad action is need, haja, need. وَهُوَ عَلَيْهِ مُحَالٌ. God has no haja. This da'i haja cannot come to God. Why? Because God is غَيْرُ مُحْتَاج. God is not needy. وَإِمَّا دَاعِ الْحِكْمَةِ الْمَوْجُودَةِ فِيهِ. Or because God has hikmah, God has wisdom. But we say that yes, God has wisdom, but wisdom would not require doing bad action. لأن القبيح لا حكمة فيه. There is no wisdom in doing bad action. So this is the first argument. There is sarif and there is no da'i. The second argument, أنه لو جاز عليه القبيح لم تنع إثبات النبوات. Had it been possible for God to do bad actions, then it would have become impossible to prove prophecies. وَاللَّازِمُ بَاطِلٌ إِجْمَاعًا. This implied consequence, which is not to be able to prove nubuwwat, is definitely wrong. We have to be able to prove nubuwwat. So, the first has to be also removed. فَالْمَلْزُومُ مِثْلُهُ. So we said, Jawazul qubh, possibility of qubh coming from God requires not to be able to prove nubuwwat. But we have to prove nubuwwat, so it must be not possible that God does bad things. Bayanul mulazama. What is the relation between the two? أنه حينئذ لا يقبح منه تصديق الكاذب. If it is possible for God to do immoral actions, then God may support and confirm and affirm and endorse a liar. We don't accept this because we say God does not do bad things. But if you say God can do bad things, then a liar can be confirmed and can be supported by God. And then people, by seeing that he does miracles and all these things, they believe in him, but he's a liar. وَمَعَ ذَلِكَ لَا يُمْكِنُ الْجَازْمُ بِصِحَّةِ النُّبُوَّةِ. If it was possible for God to support a liar, then we would not be able to have certainty about the truth of this prophecy.
Sheikh, I have an objection about this evidence, because it seems to beg the question. It's like saying, if we had evil, then they would be evil, because we wouldn't be able to prove prophethood, which is an evil.
No, this is not a kind of circular. It says that you people like Asharites, you accept that we have to be able to argue for the truth of religion or not. If we are able, we have to be able to prove the truth of religion, the truth of claim of the prophets. Then how you can do it without already accepting that God would not do bad things? If you don't accept this as a principle, if this is not your presumption, then you would not be able to argue for the truth of religion.
So this is more for the it's more as an answer to Ashar rather than removing the
Yeah.
original.
So this is a kind of jadal for the people who believe in possibility of proving religion. Okay. قال فحينئذ يستحيل عليه إرادة القبيح. It's impossible for God to will doing bad things. أقول ذهبت الأشاعرة Ash'arite have gone to this, have chosen this idea, have adopted this idea that أنه تعالى مريد لمجموع الكائنات. They say God wills all the beings, everything that happens, everything that exists in this world, whether it's good or bad, moral or immoral, all are actions of God. Muridun means he wants, he wills. Majmu, all kainat, all the beings, everything which is created. Hasanatan kanat aw qabiha. Is it good or bad? Sharran aw kana aw khayran. Okay? Right, wrong, all. Imanan or kufran. Why? Because they thought this is a requirement of Tawheed af'ali. لأنه موجد للكل. Because God originates, creates, gives existence to everything. فهو مريد له. When he is giving existence to everything, so it means that he wants them. So everything comes with his will. But وذهبت المعتزلة إلى استحالة إرادته للقبيح والكفر. But the Mu'tazilites have said it's impossible that God wills immoral actions or wills disbelief. وهو الحق. And this is correct. Why? لأن إرادة القبيح أيضا قبيحة. To will something which is immoral makes your will immoral. Willing immoral things is immoral. لأننا نعلم ضرورة. Because we know necessarily or as a self-evident fact أن العقلاء كما يضمون فاعل قبيح فكذا مريده. Rational people, in the same way that they blame those who do bad things, they also blame those who will doing bad things. This ayah is also very important. تِلْكَ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةِ نَجْعَلُهَا لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُرِيدُونَ عُلُوًّا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فَسَادًا. Hereafter is for the people that they don't even will to be arrogant and to do mischief. It's not that they actually don't, do mischief. They don't want also. They don't have the will. لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فساد. Because there are people who don't do fasad because they don't have means and support for doing fasad. Yeah?
Excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry, here at the beginning we mentioned that for someone to want to do bad, the reason he does bad is because he either doesn't have the knowledge or he has a need to do it. And because Allah has the knowledge and he doesn't have a need, therefore...
Exactly.
So why are we just saying these are the two main reasons for, or the two only reasons for committing something wrong or bad, immoral? So where did we get these two criteria from? Can we not say someone just does it because he wants to do it without any reason?
That's neat.
Wise person, this is the next issue, would not do anything without reason. There must be reason for anything that a wise person do.
And why are we saying God is wise? We say he's wise because he doesn't do something wrong.
God is wise because he has all the knowledge and he is free from need. So anyone who has knowledge and is free from need will do the best things. Even not the second best thing. one of the discussions in Kalam is that God always do the best things. And this world, the whole creation, is nizam ahsan, is the best possible world. Because only that fits into God. If for example, there can be 10 options. The best, the second best, the third best, the fourth best. If God does the best, that is possible to explain. If He does the second or third best, you cannot explain why. It doesn't cost Him anything, and He has all the means, all the knowledge, and He is benevolent. So why He should do the second best or the third best? And then the best, real best is one, but others are many. Then it's tarjih bila murajjih also. Yeah. So now we go to that discussion actually, that God does everything for qaras. Yes.
There is a large number of people,
Pardon?
large number of people in India, Pakistan, and other countries who, because earlier you said that God will not let people do the bad thing. They won't lie if they follow God.
Not that God, all people. God would not let a person who wants to misguide people to be able to do miraculous things.
Yeah, so
They can do bad things, but not something that would misguide people. Using God's miracle to misguide people.
there are a number of people in that country who call themselves P or Ahmed or all this, and they use these things and they really misguide people. And there are a large number of these people there. So how do they?
But these people don't do miracles.
That's what they try to show you.
But it's not real miracle, because miracle has its own definition. Miracle, inshallah we explain later, should come with challenge. No one else would be able to do it. No one would be able to do it through learning, through experience.
How do we stop Asharites not to follow these people?
Pardon?
How do we stop Asharites not to follow these people? Because they have this belief that good and bad come from God.
You have to discuss with them to prove that husn and hope are rational, are objective, are independent, and help them to develop a critical mind. People who have no critical mind, then they can easily accept things, they can be brainwashed, they can be radicalized. Yes.
What kind of response did you find when you were discussing this kind of topic with Ashar?
I haven't discussed it with Asharites.
You don't stand a chance.
Yeah. But their arguments are there in the books.
That's why.
But Ash'arites are doing Kalam and theology. They are not different from Ahl Hadith, because if you study the history of Kalam, so there were people, Ahl Hadith, who didn't accept any discussion about religious affairs. Like that famous example that one of them was asked about Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa. What does it mean? Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa. He said, Al-Istiwa'u ma'lumun. We know the meaning of istiwa. Wal-Kayfu majhulun. But we don't know how God does istiwa on the throne. Was-su'alu bid'atun. And it's heretical to ask, because when Prophet was alive, no one asked him what does it mean. So this is the people of Hadith. This is a special terminology, not people of Hadith doesn't mean muhaddisin. People of Hadith, a specific type of people at that time. Maybe today also we have Ahl Hadith, but might be different, might be the same, I don't want to judge. Ash'arites said no, we should get into discussion about Kalam and theology. So they are mutakallim, but they are very close to the people of Hadith because they normally take things literally and they don't want to use philosophy. They don't want to use, rational method as much as possible. So it's very difficult to discuss with them because they are very close to the people who totally ban discussion. They don't ban, but they're very close to that.
This is one question I have. What did the Asharites answer to this ayat which is quoted here? Ma lahu yuridu zulman lil alamin. What did they answer to this?
They accept?
They accept it. So it doesn't zulm to human beings. So how can they say that it does zulm to human beings?
No. They don't say God does, but they say it's possible, but actually doesn't do.
Do they say he wills?
Not, he doesn't do it actually, but it's possible for him.
They, Ashar, say that the evidence of this argument, that the verse in Surah Ibrahim, I think, Wallahu khalaqakum wa ma tasna'un. They say Allah created the khair or shar, bad and
Yeah, they use many verses of the Quran, and actually they want to preserve Tawheed, but then they damage justice of God and wisdom of God. But they preserve Tawheed in their, idea. But there are, as you know, there are verses in the Quran that you cannot understand them unless you have all the relevant verses together. Otherwise, you can argue from the Quran for predestination. You can argue from the Quran for, Asharite position. But if someone has knowledge of the entire Quran and puts all the verses together and has a irrational framework, then he would understand the truth. الرابع في أنه تعالى يفعل لغرض. God does things for gharaz, for purpose. For everything that God does, there is a purpose, at least one purpose. لدلالة القرآن عليه. One reason is because Quran indicates that. The second, والاستلزام نفيه العبث. If you say God doesn't have purpose, it means that God does things in vain. عبث. أفحسبتم أنما خلقناكم عبثا. Means without purpose. وهو قبيح. It's impossible for God to do something which is without purpose. Okay, now that God has purpose, what is purpose? وَلَيْسَ الْغَرَضُ الْإِضْرَارُ. The purpose of God cannot be harming His creature. God does not create in order to harm anyone. لِقُبْحِهِ. Because it is immoral to harm. So then what is qaraz? بَلِ النَّفْعِ. To benefit. The purpose is not to harm. The purpose is to benefit people, creation. فَلَا بُدَّ مِنَ التَّكْلِيفِ. So because God wants to help, to benefit, then He brings obligations. He issues commands to us. These commands are good because they push you towards perfection, towards good things. فَلَا بُدَّ مِنَ التَّكْلِيفِ. And what is taklif? As we will say, taklif literally comes from kulfa. What is kulfa? Mashaqqa. When something is difficult, we call it kulfa. Yeah? If you want to pray, if you want to fast, if you want to have hijab, if you want to pay khums, there is some difficulty in this. At least for the beginning. Yeah? At the beginning there is difficulty. Later maybe you start developing habit, it becomes easier, enjoying, but in the beginning it's difficult. Yeah? So taklif comes from kulfa, and kulfa means mashaqqa. But what is the technical meaning of taklif? Obligation. What is the technical meaning? بعث من يجب طاعته على ما فيه مشقة. The one whose obedience is necessary pushes towards doing something which has difficulty. على جهة الابتداء. And he does this to initiate. بشرط الإعلام, but also he has to declare this. You know, taklif has to be declared. Whenever God asks us, or any master asks his servant something, he has to declare. He has to make sure that they understand. Without them understanding, he cannot expect from them to obey him. Okay, this is the main text. Now let's go to the commentary. أقول ذهبت الأشاعرة إلى أنه تعالى لا يفعل لغرض. Asharites have chosen this idea that God doesn't do anything for purpose. You may be surprised why they say this. Because in their understanding, if we said God has a purpose, means God is needy. They thought anyone who does things for purpose, he is needy. He has haja. But we say no. If the purpose was to gain something, to benefit from it, yes. But if the purpose is to give, that's good. That's not a problem. من نکردم خلق تا سودی کنم. I have not created the world for people so that I make some profit, I benefit from. بلکه تا بر بندگان جودی کنم. I didn't create to benefit, rather I created in order to show my generosity. Yeah? Sometimes you open a restaurant or a kitchen to gain. Sometimes you open a restaurant or kitchen to give food to people. You don't want anything. You have money, you have resources, you want to give out. Yeah? Sometimes you open a school to make money. Sometimes you open a school to just educate people. You don't want to gain anything. So God has created us and provided us with opportunities for progress, not because He is gaining from this. He wants to give opportunity to us. He wants us to gain.
This was a poem, Sheikh?
This, yes. من نکردم خلق تا سودی کنم بلکه تا بر بندگان جودی کنم. Yes.
Sorry, so even someone, for example, in this world, human beings, they do good. Normally it's, that person opens a restaurant just to give food because he has another motive. He either feels good about it, or he does it for reward, or those who are, very high up, they will say, we don't do it for reward or paradise, we do it to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is still a reason, a motive why this person does it. So how do we compare that to the reason that God does good?
Because we are not absolutely perfect and we are not free from need, we may do good things in order to gain something, directly or indirectly. But even human beings can reach the point that they do good things not thinking of what they are going to gain. So it was not part of their intention. You do good things just because you know they are good. So sometimes you see there is for example, you see there's a thirsty person and you have water, that person is very thirsty, you give him water. Sometimes you give him water and thinking how much reward you are going to take from God. But sometimes you do it automatically because it has become your nature to be muhsin, to be benevolent. Yeah? So it's very important that we should notice that there are different levels in people about how they make their decision and what are the motivations. in human beings it's possible to have pure intention. In God certainly it's pure, because God is not going to gain anything. And God doesn't do anything because, for example, He wants to enjoy doing anything, or He wants to be praised. ذهبت العشائرة إلى أنه تعالى لا يفعل لغرض. He doesn't do things for purpose. Why? Because they said وَإِلَّا لَكَانَ نَاقِصًا. Because if God was doing things for purpose, He would have been naqis, incomplete. He would not be perfect. مُسْتَكْمِلًا بِذَلِكِ means He is trying to get perfection through this. So they thought to do things for purpose means you want to gain and make yourself better. You want to make yourself closer to perfection. وقالت المعتزلة إن أفعال الله معللة بالأغراض. They say actions of God are معللة. So they are done for for ends. There are ends for that, and that is purpose. وَإِلَّا لَكَانَ عَابِثًا. Had God had no purpose, it means that He does things in vain. تَعَالَى اللَّهُ عَنْهُ. God is greater, too great to do something without purpose and in vain. وَهُوَ مَذْهَبُ أَصْحَابِنَا الْإِمَامِيَّةِ. Our Shia brothers, group, companions, they have the same idea as Mu'tazilites. وَهُوَ الْحَقِّ. This idea that God has purpose is haq. لِوَجْهَيْن, because of 2 points, 2 arguments. نَقْلِيًّا وَعَقْلِيًّا. The first argument is naqli, means based on a scripture, transmitted argument. The second is aqli, is rational, intellectual. Amma naqli, the transmitted, scripture-based argument, فَدَلَالَةُ الْقُرْآنِ عَلَيْهِ ظَاهِرَةٌ. Reference of the Quran to this point is very obvious. كقوله تعالى أفحسبتم أنما خلقناكم عبثا وأنكم إلينا لا ترجعون. Have you thought that we have created you in vain and you are not going to be sent back to us? Or وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. There's a purpose. I have not created jinns or human beings except to serve me. So there's a purpose. Of course, the next ayah, which is not mentioned here, says, ما أريد منهم من رزق وما أريد أن يطعمون إن الله هو الرزاق ذو القوة المتين. I don't need them to feed me. I don't need them to, give me sustenance. I am giving sustenance to everyone. So when we say I created them to serve me, it doesn't mean to help me. It means to serve the truth. And by serving the truth, you can improve yourself. وَمَا خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاءَ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا بَاطِلًا ذَلِكَ ظَنُّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. We have not created the sky and the earth and whatever is between the sky and the earth, باطلا, out of falsehood. This is the idea of the people who have rejected the truth. Yes.
Sheikh, this third verse doesn't seem to answer that, because they're not saying He created it in falsehood. They're saying He created it without a gharad. But that doesn't equate to falsehood.
So then what is the difference between bilhaq and batil?
There's a huge difference, but they're not claiming that He's not created
No,
it.
according to them, how can they say something is bilhaq or is batil?
But that's not just by gharad.
No, we say
More.
we say when we refer to aql, we find that anyone who does something without reason, without purpose, without studying, all of this is batil. وَأَمَّا الْعَقْلِ, rational argument. فهو أنه لولا ذلك لزم أن يكون عابثا. If it was not the fact that God does things with clear, purpose in His knowledge, God would be عابث. عابث is the one who does things in vain. Yeah. وَاللَّازِمُ بَاطِلٌ. God cannot be عابث, so God cannot do things without purpose. فَالْمَلْزُومُ مِثْلُهُ. أَمَّا بَيَانُ اللُّزُومِ فَظَاهِرٌ. Why, if it had no purpose, it would have been عابث? It's clear.
Okay, what do you mean by abith?
Abith is the one who does things in abath, in vain. وأما بطلان اللازم فلأن العبث قبيح والقبيح لا يتعاطاه الحكيم. The one who is hakim would not get into something which is qabih. And what Ashar say that if God was doing things for purpose, then God would be trying to perfect Himself and getting perfection, mustakmilan. We say no. This only is true if the purpose was to benefit Himself. إذا كان الغرض عائدا إليه. The purpose was going back to Himself. لكنه ليس كذلك بل هو عائد إما إلى منفعة العبد. In the case of God, the purpose is not to send something to Himself to benefit Himself. Is either He wants to give manfa'a, a benefit to servant, أو لاقتضاء النظام الوجود, or this system of existence requires this. وذلك لا يلزم منه الاستكمال. And this doesn't imply that God Himself is trying to make Himself better and better, to improve Himself. Then we said وَلَيْسَ الْغَرَض. Okay, so He has غَرَض. غَرَض cannot be harming others. Okay, we said in the main text, لَيْسَ الْغَرَضُ الْإِضْرَارِ. God has purpose, and the purpose is not to harm. The purpose is to benefit. Gharaz cannot be, in the case of God, to harm. Yes.
Sheikh, according to some of our narrations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Hadi Qudsi that فَأَرَدْتُ أَنْ أَعْرَفْ, which is why He created. So He wanted to be known.
Yeah.
So what we're saying here is that wanting to be known, this is actually to benefit others and not for His own.
Yes. Because they benefit from knowing God.
Yes.
وليس الغرض والإضرار. أقول لما ثبت أن فعله تعالى معلل بالغرض. When it is established, it is proved that actions of God are caused by gharaz. So as end, as illat qa'i, there is gharaz for God. وأن الغرض عائد إلى غيره. And second thing that we proved was that the purpose goes back to the servants. The benefit goes to the servants. فليس الغرض حينئذ إضرار ذلك الغير. So when we say the purpose has to do with the creation, the servant of God, not in the sense of harming them. It's in the sense of benefiting them, not harming them. ليس الغرض حينئذ إضرار ذلك الغير. It's not to harm that غير. لأن ذلك قبيح عند العقلاء. According to the rational people, it's ugly, it's immoral to harm others. كمن قدم إلى غيره طعاما مسموما يريد به قتله. Someone gives a poisoned food to another person to kill him. Uqala say this is immoral.
Depends who it is. Doesn't it depend who the person is on the other side?
You are talking about a human being as such, any human being. فإن لم يكن الغرض الإضرار, if the purpose is not to harm, then تعين أن يكون النافع. Then it has to be to benefit. وهو المطلوب. Okay, now we have to have taklif, obligation. لما ثبت الغرض من فعله تعالى نفع العبد, when it is established that the purpose of God in His action is to benefit servant, we say, okay, what is the best benefit for the servants? Ath-thawab, reward. Because getting reward in the hereafter is good. Compared to this good, giving food, giving money, all these things is not as important as giving them thawab. How can someone get thawab? By giving them taklif, and then when they obey, they get thawab. وَلَا نَفْعَ حَقِيقِيَّ إِلَّا الثَّوَابِ. There is no real benefit except reward. لَأَنَّمَا عَدَاهُ. Because anything other than thawab, إِمَّا دَفْعُ ضَرَرٍ. It's either to remove harm from them, keep them away from harm, which is good, but not very great good. The second is to give them something in dunya which is temporary, to benefit them in a temporary way. This is also not very good. It's good, but what is very good is to give them sawab, which is eternal, which remains for them. Check please. لأنما عداه, because other than harming means to benefit. Benefit can be two things. Either to remove zarar, harm from them, to save them from harm, or jalb naf'in غير mustamir, or give them some benefit, but something which is temporary. This is not so good. And anything in dunya is temporary. فَلَا يَحْسُنُ أَنْ يَكُونَ ذَلِكَ غَرَضًا لِخَلْقِ الْعَابِ. So the purpose of creating human beings cannot be just to avoid harm reaching them, or just to give them short-term good. ثُمَّ الثَّوَابِ يَقْبَحُ الْإِبْتِدَاءُ بِهِ. If you want to give them thawab free of charge, without them doing anything, it's not good. They become lazy, they don't work, they don't, improve themselves. If a teacher gives to everyone A, then they don't learn anything. Yeah? So, you shouldn't give them a reward without them doing something. ثم الثواب يقبح الابتداء به كما يأتي. As we will explain later in future, it's not good to give thawab without them already doing something, have done something. فاقتضت الحكمة توسط التكليف. So wisdom requires that there must be taklif. So instead of giving them thawab without reason, we give them obligation. And if they appreciate and implement and follow it, then we give them reward. Like instead of just giving you A without doing anything, we give you a homework. And then after that, we look into your homework, and who has done it, we give him a mark. And who has done it better, we give him a good mark. Yes? What is taklif? At-taklifu lughatan مأخوذ من الكلفة. As a word, it comes from kulfa. In Farsi, we have kulfat, but it's different. Kulfat is used for maid or a female servant, or kulfat. But this is kulfa in Arabic, which means difficulty. Something which has difficulty, it's not easy. So literally comes from kulfa, وهي المشقة. Mashaqqa means what? Difficult. Something which is difficult. Vastilahan. But technically, as Musannif said, taklif is what? Ba'athu man yajibu ta'atuhu. The one whose obedience is wajib, obligatory, pushes servant to do something. فَالْبَعْثُ عَلَى الشَّيْء. When we say ba'ath, means pushing, moving someone. Al-haml. حمل عليه means you push him to do it. وَمَنْ تَجِبُ طَاعَتُهُ, we said the one whose obedience is wajib pushes. Who is the one whose obedience is wajib? مَنْ تَجِبُ طَاعَتُهُ هُوَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى. فَلِذَلِكَ قَالَ عَلَى جَهَةِ الْإِبْتِدَاءِ. God is to be obeyed primarily in the first place. Because the Prophet is also to be obeyed, but secondarily. Because of God, the Prophet is obeyed. Because of Prophet, Imams are obeyed. Or for example, you have to obey your parents because God says to obey your parents. Okay? So the one who has to be obeyed, ala jahat al-ibtida, in the first place, is God. لأن وجوب طاعة غير الله كالنبي والإمام والوالد والسيد, master, والمنعم, the one who has given you blessing, تابع ومتفرع على طاعة الله. They all follow and depend on obedience to God. We said على ما فيه مشقة. Taklif has to be asking to do, pushing towards doing something which is difficult. احتراضا عما لا مشقة فيه. This is to avoid about doing something which has no difficulty. For example, كالبعث على النكاح, to marry. To marry is necessary. Of course, it's mustahab, but for the people that cannot maintain their piety and chastity, it's wajib. But if it is very sweet and very easy, then it's not taklif. You know? Of course, because it has also some difficulties, we can say it is also taklif. But if it is but just pleasure, so it's not taklif. Or al-aklu min al-at'imati wal-ashraba. Eating, drinking, you enjoy eating and drinking. So if taklif was like just eating and drinking, there was no mashaqah. Bishart al-i'lam, it has to be declared. What does it mean? It means that mukallaf, the one that you ask him to do something, must be informed what he is supposed to do. Al-i'lam lil-mukallaf bima kullifa bih. He has to do what we want from him. وَهُوَ مِنْ شَرَائِطِ حُسْنِ التَّكْلِيفِ. One of the conditions of goodness of taklif, issuing commands and obligating people, is this. And then he mentions شَرَائِطُ حُسْنِ التَّكْلِيفِ, and then he mentions something about mukallif and mukallaf. Very beautiful discussion. Can you bear with me for 10 minutes?
Yes.
Or you're tired?
Did you tell me what's husn taklif?
10 minutes, inshallah, I finish this part.
Husn taklif.
Pardon?
Husn taklif.
Goodness. When taklif is good. Because you cannot just issue commands and ask people to do things. There are some conditions. For example, inshallah we'll mention, it has to be manageable. It has to be declared in time. Yes.
Sheikh, what was mentioned about mashaqqa.
Yeah.
What if something is initially extremely difficult, but then with time
Yeah.
it's a very good, enjoyable habit? And
Yes. No problem. This is the literal meaning, and it has also some application to takalif. Otherwise, there can be takalif which have no difficulty, or you get used to do it and enjoy it. Like Rasulullah said, Salat is qurratu aini. So for him it was not taklif, mashaqqa in doing Salat. Okay, shara'itu husn, he means husn taklif. When taklif is good, taklif means to obligate, to issue commands. He says, al-awwal, the first type of conditions return or refer to taklif itself. So obligating, commanding people to do something, this is something that has conditions. Mukallaf also has conditions. Mukallaf also has conditions. So about taklif itself. Al-awwal intifa'ul mafsadati fi. When you want to ask people to do something, there must be no corruption, no bad thing in that. God would not ask us to do something which has mafsada, which has corruption or harm in it. 1. 2. تقدمه على وقت الفعل. Taklif must be issued before the time of action. If you want me to do something at 12, you cannot say to me at 12 or even after 12 that you had to do it at 12. You have to tell me in advance. Is it clear? Taklif always should be declared in advance. Third, إمكان وقوعه. It must be possible to happen. If you ask him to do something which is impossible, this is not a good taklif. Yes? If I tell you every day you have to do 5 hours mubahasa, this is not possible for you. Yeah? But if I say do at least half an hour mubahasa for every lesson, so this is possible. الرابع ثبوت صفة زائدة على حسنه. There must be something more than just saying this taklif is okay. There must be a good coming out of this. Just say, there is no problem in this taklif because we are asking something which is possible and we are giving them enough notice. This is not enough. There must be something good coming out of this. So these are conditions for taklif. الثاني عائد إلى المكلف. The one who issues commands also has to meet some conditions. Mukallaf, who is mukallaf? Fa'ilu taklif, the one who issues commands. Again, there are 4 conditions. First, علمه بصفات الفعل من كونه حسنا أو غبيا. He must know whether an action is good or bad. You cannot ask people to do something without you knowing whether they are good or bad. Second, علمه بقدر ما يستحقه كل واحد من المكلفين من ثواب وعقاب. He must know that if they do this, how much reward they deserve. Or if they don't do it, how much punishment they deserve. So he must know the reward and punishment which come after this. Third, قدرته على إيصال المستحق حقه. He has to have the power to make sure that when someone does something and deserves reward, he can make sure that the reward would reach that person. Yeah? I cannot tell you do this and this is your reward, but then I'm not able to deliver it. Is it clear? الرابع كونه غير فاعل للقبيح. The one who issues commands, he himself must not do bad things. You cannot ask people to do good things and then you yourself do bad things. Okay? Can you or you cannot? You can't. الثالث, there are also conditions. عائد إلى المكلف. The one that you ask him to do, that person also has to have some conditions. You cannot ask everyone. Or you have to have few conditions observed. الأول قدرته على الفعل. When you ask someone to do something, see whether that person has ability to do it or not. قدرته, he must be capable of doing it. Why? Because لاستحالة تكليف ما لا يطاق. It's impossible to ask people to do what they cannot do. ما لا يطاق means they don't have لا طاقة لنا به. They don't have means and power to do it. كتكليف الأعمى بنقط المصحف والزمن بالطيران. Someone who is blind, ask him to, for example, put dots on the Quran or write the Quran, with calligraphy, something like this. He's not able to do it. Or someone who is not able to walk, we ask him to fly. He's not even able, he has mobility problem, you ask him to.
Sorry, why do we ask in the Quran then, رَبَّنَا لَا تُحَمِّلْنَا مَا لَا طَاقَةَ لَنَا بِهِ? So if Allah doesn't do that anyway, why are we asking not to give us a taklif?
Yeah, very good question. Did you get the question? If it is impossible for God to ask us to do something which we cannot, then what is the need for saying لا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به? Don't ask us to do something that we cannot do. What is the answer?
Sometimes the work is
Pardon?
too
Pardon?
difficult to do. Sometimes the work is extremely difficult to do. So we, for
So
example, also
taqa,
family.
taqa is sometimes absolute taqa, means we can never do it. But sometimes, like here, it means something that you can do it, but it is
Because of disease, for example.
usru haraj. So it's not that it's muhalun aqlan, but it's very difficult. For example, if God asks us to do fasting 365 days, still we have taqa, we are not going to die. If we were going to fast 365 days, we were not going to die. But in an Urfi language, we can say this is too much to expect from people. They don't have ability to fast all the days. This is one answer. There is also another answer. It's not good to ask people to do something that they cannot do it. But sometimes people, when they don't do what they can do, as a punishment, you can ask them to do what they cannot do. And then you punish them further. Okay? So it's possible. Yes.
I see another point, Sheikh, that you might get taklif which you are not ready for. Sometimes like an examination from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
But if you are not ready, you should not
You
be
are not ready.
given that taklif.
No, I mean, sometimes, for example, if I get a kind of a trouble today, I do not have the faith enough to manage it. But maybe in 2 years, if I get it, then it will be, I am more understanding how to deal with this trouble then.
So, can you do it now or you cannot do it?
I might not be able to do it now, so I ask Allah not to give it to me now.
So, if you are not able, He will not ask you to do it.
No, I mean taklif, not in the sense of wajibat, in the sense of a life situation, for example.
Yeah.
Like ikhtibar.
Yeah. God would never ask someone, even in his life, to cope with something that he cannot cope with.
And
Anything that happens to you shows that you have this much of capacity to cope with this. But what you say right, in the sense that we don't mean intellectually, rationally impossible. That one God never does. But something which is very difficult, something that most of people cannot tolerate, although it is possible. Even those things will not be.
Maybe, Sheikhna, this point about ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help for another side. For example, I am sick and I can't do the salah exactly. And I say, رَبَّنَا لَا تُحَمِّلْنَا, that I ask Allah to give me power and give me help to do that wajibah.
So if you want to ask God for power, then you don't say لا تحمل, say قوة على خدمتك جوارحي.
Can be both.
So that's another issue. Sometimes you say, I want to do this, help me to do it. But sometimes you say, don't ask me to do something that I cannot do. So it means that this is something that you cannot cope with, you cannot tolerate. So such things don't come from God in the first place. But if you really mean something impossible. But if you mean something which is possible but difficult, makes life difficult, make life painful. So we ask God even these things to be kept away from us. Yes.
Sheikh, sometimes we see, for example, a test of patience where the test is so difficult that the person loses their sanity. What about these?
He could not keep his patience.
No, he lost his.
No,
his
he
mind.
lost. Many people lose their patience, but was it possible for him to save or not? They can keep their patience.
No, they couldn't. In some cases, they
No,
couldn't.
they couldn't because they didn't want to. They didn't struggle enough.
How could they?
Everyone has ability to be patient.
But
Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu isbiru. If it was not possible, God would not have asked you to be patient. It's possible. But sometimes we are heedless, or we take it easy, or we just act out of emotions. So we lose our patience, but we could have remained patient.
but Sheikh, if you lose your patience in such situation, for example, as
Yes.
you mentioned, it wouldn't lead to losing your sanity. Even. Sometimes the issue is so big that you.
If
you have no
someone
patience.
if someone loses, for example, his aql, then he's not responsible anymore.
Yes, but that.
If, for example, sometimes a tragedy happens in front of his eyes, they kill his children, for
Exactly,
example,
yes.
so he loses his mind. Then he's not mas'ul, he's not responsible.
But
If he's totally unconscious, and totally lost his aql.
yes, obviously after that point he's no longer.
But this is
responsible.
very rare. It's
Yeah.
very rare.
But after that point, obviously he's no
Ah,
longer responsible.
after that he's
But
not responsible.
At that point, the cause which made him lose his mind, that was over his limit,
Yeah.
and it happens sometimes.
Very rarely,
Mm.
and this is not something that God wanted. When God issues a command, He would consider how much we can cope with. But when people cause difficulty for us, then they may not consider these things. They may even kill us. But what then God wants from you at that situation would be something that you can manage. God would not ask from you to be doing, miracles or heroic things. Wus'aha. Yes. Means according to their ability, capacity. So, one is that mukallaf should have power. Second, ilmuhu bima kullifa bih. He must know what he has been asked to do. You cannot keep people unaware and still ask them to do something. He must know what he has been asked to do, or if he doesn't know right now, he has to have ability to find out. Imkanu ilmihi bih. For example, we sent an email to you to prepare yourself for exam. So maybe you didn't check your email, but you were able to check your email. So it's not a good excuse to say, I didn't know. So why you didn't check your email? Yeah? If someone says, I didn't know anything about, for example, Revelation, say, why you didn't go and study? Why you didn't inquire? So Hadi says, on the day of judgment, some people will be asked, Halla amilt. Why you didn't act? They say, we didn't know. Then they'll be asked, Halla ta'allamt. Why you didn't learn? We opened Hose for you in London. What excuse you have? Okay. Ilmuhu bima kullifa bih. He knows what he has been asked to do. Or imkanu ilmihi bih. If he doesn't know right now, at least it's possible for him to find out. Okay? We don't need to put knowledge in the mind of people. We need to make knowledge available. Okay? Yes.
This argument between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I'm creating Adam. So when it comes to the knowledge, why the angel were not capable to take the knowledge, and Adam was.
Capacity.
If it was the capacity, then why they were asked for things which they didn't have any capacity?
No, they were not asked as a real taklif. They were asked in order to show that they cannot. We call this ta'jiz.
Tajis.
Sometimes you ask people to prove to them that they are not able to do it.
So it's from ages.
Ajz. Ajz means, lack of power, incompetence.
Ajz.
Yes, ajz, yeah. فَالْجَاهِلُ الْمُتَمَكِّنُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ غَيْرُ مَعْذُورٍ. The one who doesn't know, but he has access to knowledge, he has ability to discover, he is not excused. Okay? You cannot say jahl is excused, no. Jahl is an excuse for the one who was not able to know. Okay? الثالث, the third condition for mukallaf, the one who is asked to do something, is إمكان آلة الفعل. What is needed for the action should be available, should be possible. For example, you need water for wuzu, or soil for tayammum, for example. ثم متعلق التكليف. What you are asked to do. Okay? Sometimes you are asked to know something. Sometimes you are asked to develop dhann, a kind of opinion about something, suspicion. So suspicion in the technical sense means more than 50%. Sometimes you are asked to do something. So taklif can be knowing something, can be developing opinion and dhann about something, or can be doing something. Muta'allaq taklif, the taklif belongs, muta'allaq is the one, something that taklif belongs to it, means what are you asked to do? Can be ilm, knowledge, or dhann, or amal. Amal ilm, فَإِمَّا عَقْلِيٌّ, rational knowledge. For example, everyone has taklif to know his creator and his qualities, like justice, for example, prophethood, nubuwwah, imamah. These are things that are matter of knowledge. You don't need to do something. You need to learn something. You need to believe in something. Sometimes is sam'i. It's not aqli. It's sam'i. Like shar'iyyat. You need to know your rulings, for example, about salat and other things, not by intellectual arguments only, but by referring to the scripture and fiqh and ijtihad. وَأَمَّا الظَّنِّ. Sometimes you don't need to have certainty. For example, qibla. Which direction is for Mecca? You use some evidence or some scientific methods, but you cannot say, I have 100% knowledge that this is the direction. For example. وَأَمَّا الْعَمَلِ. When taklif is to do something, like ibadat, you have to pray. Not just to know ibadat, you have to do ibadat. Okay, so alhamdulillah, we finished up to here. Inshallah, we continue from page 69. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.